I'm Joe Halco, Director of Community Relations for Northwestern Counseling and Support Services, and welcome to another episode of NCSS Here for You. Since 1958, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to high-quality services which promote healthy living and emotional well-being to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. We take our role in the community seriously and strive to provide the highest continuum of quality services to meet the needs of individuals who at any point seek assistance. 5 years ago, Todd Bauman was named the Chief Executive Officer at NCSS. A 5-year period can be viewed as a milestone, and today we will discuss developments that have taken place since 2017. One thing is for certain: change is constant. However, the values of the organization remain firm. They are safety, responsiveness, compassion, and integrity. To discuss his 5 years as CEO of NCSS, I'm pleased to introduce this month's guest, Todd Bauman, CEO of NCSS. Todd, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Joe. Glad to be here.
Hey, it's great to have you here, and also hard to believe that it's been 5 years since the moment that you took over the organization, but certainly it is a milestone moment, and I think one that we can share with the viewers a lot of what's transpired during your tenure as Chief Executive Officer. So, besides the pandemic, which no one could have anticipated, what's been the most unexpected challenge that you've encountered in your 5 years?
I think thinking back, it is amazing how quickly the 5 years have just flown by. I do think the last couple of years in particular have been very challenging for us as an agency, the people we serve, our community as a whole. We had just gone through what we were calling payment reform, where we changed our entire service delivery model to move away from a fee-for-service to a value-based payment, which gives us much more flexibility in the way that we can provide care. That was a heavy lift, and we were right in the middle of that. We also rolled out a new electronic medical record, which, that's going to be challenging in good times, let alone in the middle of a pandemic. We rolled that out. And then we did have the pandemic, which is just incredible impact on our staff and the people we serve. People really struggled with that. And I always say, all three of those are things that you might do once in your career. Pandemic, hopefully you never do that in your life. And we did all three at the same time. Yeah. So it definitely presented some challenges. But I think the issue that came through most clearly for me is the incredible resilience of our staff and our community as a whole. People really rallied together to push through those challenges together. And I think we've done a good job with them.
Yeah, and you're right. It's amazing that such big initiatives have been taking place on top of a pandemic, and yet things are moving forward and in a very positive direction. So, how do you view the struggles of getting people to understand the importance of mental health in relation to their physical health?
That's one area where I think, to some extent, the pandemic was an opportunity for us. I think the pandemic was so stressful and impacted so many people in so many different ways that it's kind of opened up a door to us talking about mental health differently than maybe we had before. I think even at the national level, you look at some recent famous athletes. You got Naomi Osaka from tennis, Simone Biles, even going back a little further, Michael Phelps, even going back further, Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah.
People have struggled with some type of mental health issue, and I feel like now we do have an opportunity to talk about them maybe more openly than we did before, because it just impacts so many of us. And I do think to some extent the pandemic has opened up that door to that conversation in a deeper, richer kind of way than maybe was there before.
Yeah, that is so true and so necessary to counter stigma. I mean, just incredible the last couple of years how much space, time, podcasts, TV shows, go on and on, have been devoted to mental health, which is a big plus. So NCSS continues to increase access to mental health treatment through our collaboration with many community partners. And, current partnerships include, we have NCSS staff embedded in primary and secondary care practices, in law enforcement, and in the NMC emergency department. So how has this impacted the access and the service delivery?
I think historically, people have needed to come to us to access mental health care, and we've really tried to turn that around. I think due to stigma, people may be somewhat hesitant to come into our shop and access care, where they might be much more willing to go into their primary care office and talk to their doc about some issue that they might be having. So we've worked really hard to ensure that people have access to care in whatever format they're most comfortable. They can come into our agency and access care, but they can also, as you said, we are currently in primary care offices. We were one of the first areas of the state to embed social workers in our law enforcement office, our state police barracks, as well as local police offices. And we are currently in NMC's emergency department as well. And all of these things allow us to be more integrated, I think, into our community. They help ensure that people needing care have access to care at a time and place that's most comfortable to them. So ideally, people don't fall through the cracks.
Yeah, for sure. And, in addition to the staff being located in community partner locations, people are usually surprised to hear that most of our services are actually provided in-home and in the community and not in our buildings. And one area that we haven't touched upon that we have been in for many years as well and made a huge impact are schools as well. But the point being that we are so community and home-based. Can you explain how, in essence, we really are like a fabric of the community as opposed to being, locked into these various buildings that we have around the area?
When I talk to people in the community about NCSS and mental health treatment, people oftentimes will make an assumption that the bulk of what we do is office-based. People will describe, traditional therapy sessions. They'll describe psychiatry. Maybe crisis services is another area that I think people are familiar with. But when you look at the data, that's only about 8% of what our agency does. 92% of the services that we deliver take place beyond our walls, outside of our agency. Again, we are embedded in other places. A significant portion of our services are designed to take place right in people's home, within the community itself as a whole. And as you mentioned, in partnership with schools, we have really rich partnerships with our schools. And together, I feel like we can really have an impact on the well-being of kids and help them to be available for learning, to succeed in a school setting. Before some of these partnerships, a lot of the kids that we would serve would have been sent away to residential. But because of the partnership we have with schools, we're able to help kids succeed in school. And then ideally, they can then sleep at home in their own beds and stay with their families. They don't have to get sent away. So we really try hard to, again, build those partnerships. We know we're stronger when we do work collaboratively, just to help people succeed, achieve their the best life that they can, promote their well-being.
Yeah. Now, certainly the pandemic's been a game changer. How has NCSS adapted to continue providing quality care to our clients and consumers during this time?
This is something I think I'm really proud of our staff and what we were able to accomplish. When the pandemic really hit in March of 2020, I actually have a picture I took of our parking lot. It was taken about noon on a Tuesday, and our parking lot was empty. And so even though we couldn't be in the building, we knew we still had a job to do. We still had people that needed to access care. So our staff got just incredibly creative. Our outpatient team was able to develop remote capacity, develop a telehealth capacity, and continue to provide care through telehealth services. One of our school-based autism teams, schools were closed, so the kids were not in school, but they actually developed activities that they did remotely, and people could log in and participate in these activities. One of them in particular was a science class that they taught, and they actually dressed up like scientists, and they provided this live interactive experience for students to then access, and they could do some of these science experiments at home in real time in their kitchen with their parents. I think our residential staff, a lot of the people that we have living in residential are might have a concurrent chronic health condition that puts them at greater risk. And so our residential staff just really went into this incredibly active ability to protect the people who live in our residential programs. And they made great sacrifices on their own, and they didn't do a lot of things themselves because they didn't want to be exposed, because then they knew they wouldn't then be able to come into work and provide care. So those three service delivery areas, are just three examples of people able to get really creative and develop different ways of providing care. And I also want to just mention, our administrative structures. The service delivery people could not do it on their own. Yeah. We have a facilities team that ensured that people had the proper PPE, cleaning supplies, whatever things they needed to ensure that people were safe. And our IT team, we went out and purchased phones, we purchased laptops, we set up Zoom accounts, and our IT team managed all of those in order to ensure that our had the resources that they needed to be able to provide high quality care, because we knew our community needed that care during that crisis more than ever.
Yeah, incredible collaboration between numerous departments for certain. So, when you talk about a lot of the amazing outcomes that occurred since the beginning of the pandemic, one of the most amazing ones was at our NCSS SOAR Learning Center. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
When the pandemic first hit, a lot of schools closed. A lot of schools closed down, and they found ways to ensure that kids had access to education in different ways. Our population, the type of student that attends our SOAR Learning Center, it's a K through 12 school, serves about 70 kids a year. They need a higher level of support, a higher level of care, which is why they're placed with us. And so our staff knew they had to find a way in order to be able to provide that educational support, that mental health support, in a way that allowed those kids to continue to come into school, because they needed that. They weren't going to be successful if they flipped that type of service to telehealth. And so that team in particular just really stepped up, found ways to mitigate risk, maintain safety, and keep that school open. And out of the entire year, they closed for just 2 days for cleaning purposes. But they were able to stay open the entire year and provide those kids the level of support that they needed in that moment. And they needed a high level of support. And our staff were able to do that.
Yeah, that is amazing when you do kind of go back in time and think about how often schools were closed, and the whole remote learning model, that for the SOAR Learning Center to be able to do what they did and with that entire staff is truly amazing, and what it meant for those students, how important that was for those students during that time frame as well. So NCSS is also the only designated mental health agency in the state that also has the Parent-Child Center as part of it. So how does this benefit the community?
So there's a network of parent-child centers all over Vermont. All parts of the state have one. Ours is embedded directly within our agency, and we are unique in that way. I feel strongly that makes us stronger as an agency. It makes our services stronger. Typically, when people think of mental health services, it tends to be after the fact. It's once someone develops symptoms, they come in and access care. the parent-child center programming is really designed, it's far more upstream, it's preventative. It's designed to identify people that might be at risk of some type of developing a mental health issue later in life, and we try and intervene very early to provide a level of support early on to try and mitigate then the need for higher levels of care. We have a staff working both in Franklin and Grand Isle, and we recently just expanded that program to Chittenden County. And we have a team that operates out of the Lund Family Center down in Chittenden County. It's a partnership with the Howard Center that we have, so we can now provide services, early childhood services, really birth to 3, to families in the Chittenden County area that require some type of additional supports just to get the child and the family off on the best start possible. Again, all with the goal of being upstream, preventative, and ideally mitigating some of that risk down the road so people can, just achieve whatever success is to them.
Yeah. And the pandemic has certainly impacted the NCSS workforce as well. And certainly all industries' workforces, but we're going to talk about ours because of the critical nature of it. So there's been challenges to fill a variety of roles, and it's become increasingly difficult as the needs continue to increase. So we've got staffing challenges, and yet, as we know, the needs of the community have increased over the past couple of years. So what strategies has NCSS utilized to meet these staffing challenges?
Staffing's been tough. I do think the pandemic has just really taken its toll on people professionally and personally.
Yeah.
A lot of our staff, we did lose a lot of staff to deciding, you know what, I just want to stay home and raise my child right now. And they're going to find a way to make that work for them. So we did lose a lot of staff for a variety of reasons. And we have gotten very creative about our recruiting efforts. We have a lot of the traditional, I'll say paper-based recruiting. We also have gotten very active in social media. We do job fairs, any way at all to get the word out and direct people to our agency just to learn more about what options might be here, what professional career opportunities might have. And interestingly, our number one recruiting tool that we have is our Refer a Friend program. And that's where if someone works at our agency and they invite a friend to come and apply, and that friend then goes on to get hired, the person that referred them gets $500 that we'll give as part of our Refer a Friend program. And that is our number one recruiting tool, and about 40% of all new employees come to us from people that work at our agency. Just this morning we had our new employee orientation, and I always jump in just to hear people's backstory and as they introduce themselves. And we went around, and there were a couple people in that room today even who were here because they had friends that worked here and they'd heard it was a great place to work. One thing that people talked quite a bit about was meaning, that they had jobs before, but they didn't feel their job had purpose.
Yeah.
And they wanted to come to our agency because they felt our jobs had purpose, our jobs had meaning, and people wanted to be part of something like that.
Yeah, that is truly part of the puzzle, so to speak, is that there's a lot of people who are in jobs that they truly don't perhaps like that much, and they don't feel that it has the meaning. But certainly all of the jobs at NCSS, no matter which one you want to look at, it would fall into it definitely has meaning and a purpose. So speaking of new initiatives, the 988 three-digit number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline was recently introduced to the public in mid-July. However, the NCSS Emergency Services Team was the first affiliated Vermont-based organization that's been fielding calls for the national hotline since 2019, actually, for the 802 area code. Todd, can you speak to the importance of this change to 988?
When this first was rolled out back in 2019, as you said, we knew this was something that we wanted to be part of. Access to care and ensuring that our community has access to care is just something that's really important to us. So we raised our hand and we said, we will be part of this. We will be the agency that leads this in Vermont. And starting in 2019, anyone that called the Lifeline number at that time with an 802 phone number, those calls all got routed into our agency, and they were answered by our team of emergency services clinicians. Since then, just recently, they've changed the number just to be 988 to make it simpler, but the process is the exact same. So anywhere in Vermont during the day, when someone calls 988, those calls do come into our agency, and they are answered by us. We spend time just talking to people, supporting them, through an immediate crisis, answering questions that they might have, and sometimes we may make referrals to their local community mental health center if we feel like this person would benefit from some ongoing supports. We may just inform them of what their resources are and encourage them to access local services. In the evening, those calls go to the Northeast Kingdom. They get picked up by the Northeast Kingdom. But again, anytime someone calls 988, anytime during the day, anywhere in Vermont, all of those calls do come in to us, and they're answered by our team of clinicians.
Yeah, and it's such an important program because certainly anyone who's struggling, first and foremost, with suicidal thoughts, or there's another mental health concern that they really just can't seem to navigate. They need someone to talk to, and they need some professional advice. And certainly the hope, just like with 911, is that people will, in the back of their minds, it'll become second nature, that if they're truly having a circumstance that they need help, it's just 988. They don't have to worry about a 10-digit number, to contact. So, and I would say kudos to our emergency services staff too for the great work that they have done over the past couple of years in answering those calls.
I'll tell you, it's an incredible team of people, and I think that job in particular is challenging because when they come into work in the morning, they don't know what their day's going to be like.
Yeah.
That phone rings and they don't know what's on the other end until they answer. So it takes a certain kind of person that's able to do that and provide that level of care no matter what it is. And that team is just incredibly dedicated and just here to support the people in our community that do call.
Yeah. So let's take a look to the future for the moment. And what challenges will NCSS face as the organization strives to continue providing the quality care that it's become known for?
I'll tell you, I think the one area that I do think we need to continue to develop are within our community partnerships. We know that we cannot do this alone. Mental health is not a standalone issue. It's related to physical health, it's related to housing, it's related to food security, employment. We know we need to work with our community partners in order to provide comprehensive services that help people out across their entire lifespan in all aspects of their life. We're not going to be successful if we come at things just as a standalone mental health issue. So one of the areas that I'm really invested in right now is I feel like the pandemic, we've kind of gone internal a little bit during the pandemic, and we definitely want to partner with our community, NMC, the Notch, home health. We want to reach out to all those people and just make sure that our services are aligned, we're pulling in the same direction, and we're helping people together. And we think if we can do that, we think we're going to have better health outcomes overall, and the people of our community will have better outcomes collectively as well.
And when you when you really get down to it, I mean, the bottom line is we want a healthier community. And the only way to successfully get a healthier community, as you've said, is there's this collaborative effort that needs to take place, because it's everything from all the various physical health components to the tie with mental health, and the fact that you need to have a holistic approach if you truly want individuals to be, for their well-being and living a life as independently and as good as they possibly can. And I think you make a good point about, a lot of times when organizations become siloed and they don't really collaborate in other areas. It's almost like where an organization feels they have to build it all to make it happen versus utilizing the expertise of organizations that already have things in place to help our local residents. And I think that's a big part of what needs to take place.
We have incredible talent, I think, across our entire healthcare system, our healthcare network in our region, and we are definitely better off if we leverage each other's talents together collectively. It's something that I feel like there is kind of a desire for right now that maybe was not there even just a few years ago. And there's a team of people coming together regularly to figure out how best to do that. What are our priorities going to be, and how do we align our work so we're all pulling in the same direction?
And that's not unlike when we look within our own organization. You roll back many years ago, and each of the service divisions were almost like standalone units. And now, even though we do have these distinct service delivery divisions, everybody works together. You see a lot of collaboration, even within somebody that you're working with, other family members, whatever the case may be. People are all pulling in the same direction to try to help that individual that has come to us who's struggling. So I was just going to say that it's really, those barriers were broken down at NCSS over the years. And it's kind of like, the hope is that as we go forward as a community, that all the various community partners can certainly come together around the table and figure out all the best ways to serve the community.
We just finished, NMC led our community health needs assessment.
Yes.
That was just completed. And they pulled together a really good group of people to help facilitate that process. And it was really clear from the community. What we heard really clearly was we need to be pulling together. We need to bring our services together and help people holistically. Not think about physical health or mental health or housing or employment. We need to bring all those things together and help the person as a whole. And so that is where there's a lot of energy right now here locally to do that. And we've got a great group of people across the whole community that is pulling on that.
Yeah, I think this community, unlike maybe some other communities even throughout Vermont, is much more willing to sit down and try to figure out how to collaborate and make things better for the individuals that we're serving. So certainly that is something to look forward to in the future as we navigate what is going to happen in 2023 and beyond. And so with that, Todd, I do want to thank you for being here this month and sharing some of your vision with us and some of what has happened during the first 5 years of your tenure. So I do want to thank Todd Bauman for sharing his insights on the challenges and changes that NCSS has faced over the past 5 years since he's become Chief Executive Officer. I also want to thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us again this month. You can learn more about all of the NCSS programs and services by logging on to ncssinc.org. I'm Joe Halco, and I'll be back next month with another episode of NCSS Here for You.